Yo, what's up? What's up? It's me, Tim Keys. And I wanted to hop on here real quick and talk about the situation with Universal Music and Udio and, the new developments that have taken place. This came out like last week. Now, in a prior video I had done a few months ago, I talked about the situation with Timberland and Suno and the whole situation on that end with the lawsuits. And one of the things I said was like, these companies at some point are probably going to come to some sort of agreement so that they can coexist. Universal Music is not going anywhere, and Udio and Suno, they are not going anywhere per se. And so here we are, October 29th, 2025. Universal Studios, or pardon me, Universal Music Group and Udio, they have settled this situation with the copyright infringement, and now they are, collaborating. And basically, in a nutshell, it is going to result in some changes to Udio's platform. And without getting to all the details, you can read this stuff for yourself. But basically, what's going to happen is they're going to relaunch Udio 2026. They're going to maintain, a lot of the AI stuff that you have been coming to use. However, they have set some limitations. If you scroll down right here, it says Udio's existing product will remain available to users during the transition period, with creations controlled within a walled garden, and the service amended in multiple ways, including fingerprinting, filtering, and other measures before launch of the updated service. In a nutshell, if you go to Udio's website, what has taken place is with this partnership, you now are not able, if you generated anything with AI, you are not able to download that stuff, past a certain point. They're going to set some limits up. I think they're giving users like an allotted time frame for like the, next few days or so to like whatever you've downloaded through generative prompts, you can, hold to that. But the reality is, you won't be able to download it. And again, to me, I tend to favor like, it's not that I like the music industry as a whole, but understanding like if you took somebody's work and didn't give them permission for it, then yeah, like you got to pay the piper, pay the man his due. And that is what's happening here. And so unfortunately for the users, if you're a paid user, you can get, something to like, soothe the pain a little bit. You get 1,200 monthly credits, and you get like 1,000 one-time grants for like non-expiring credits. So that's like, a little nicety to kind of like say, hey, we did some stuff here and we realize you are impacted by it. And unfortunately, now this is where we're at. And, it is what it is. Like, I don't have a dog in this fight either way. And what will be is what will be. I'm not for AI music. I'm not against AI music. I can see it being used as a benefit in certain ways. And then in certain ways, I can see where it is harmful to musicians and creatives. And, the conversation with real music comes into play, because is it really real music if all you did was type, you typed the AI machine a prompt and it spit out a song? Well, did you do that? Well, no, you typed in a prompt, it spit out a song, and maybe you put in the most well-typed, well-written, mentally constructed prompt that you can think of, and then it spit out this great song as a result. But you didn't actually do anything other than prompting. And, to make matters worse, this prompting could in fact be generating elements of other people's music. Matter of fact, that's where the lawsuit came from. There was a woman on her channel, Top Music Attorney, and I'm going to reference some of her stuff. About a year or so ago, maybe a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit longer. It was demonstrated on her channel that Udio and Suno had in fact used actual music from these labels to spit out, as not to spit out as tools to, get their stuff. That's problematic, but I know most people don't see it like that. But the real issue is from a practicality standpoint, in her channel, she had demonstrated like that music that was being churned out. In some cases, it was spitting out like real songs. So it was spitting out like Wham! This Christmas or Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You. And so, like, as it was being prompted, it was spitting out like real music. And so, like, well, wait a minute. Did those artists get paid for that? And if they're not, well, that's a problem. And so, regardless of how we feel about it, because I know there's strong views on this either way, you got to pay the people that's involved. And a lot of times we'll say, well, the music industry does this and this, that, and the third happens, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, but what about the producers and the people that are involved that are writing the songs and putting in the sweat equity and making the music? And that music is now being taken and being used without people's permission, and folks are not getting paid. That's problematic. And before you say, well, that's no big deal, folks don't need to be making money anyway, just consider the fact that if the shoe was on the other foot and it was your music, how would you feel then? Or, yeah, how would you respond if your intellectual property was being used without your consent and people were making money off of it? That's the other part. People are making money off of this, but you're not involved in that process. I guarantee you, when money is involved, you would change your tune. And for a lot of folks that would, argue against, some of these scenarios, you're only saying that because the reality is the money is not necessarily coming your way. Very few people would be like, hey, I'll just let you use whatever and have a nonchalant attitude about it, especially like if we're talking tens of thousands of dollars being transacted upon and moved around, and you don't get to see any of that. And so that's kind of like what has happened here. I'm not a fan of Universal per se. I'm not a fan of Udio per se. I could care less across the board, but I do feel strongly about, people getting paid and looking at it from the top down. Now, the other side to this is unfortunate. Like, she goes in and she talks about like the situation with Udio having to do an apology. And I want you to take a look at this clip real quick, just a portion. Let's see if it will do it without being weird. And
after this announcement came out, and looked like it was with the users. And so I want to look at that real quick.
Great. Thanks everybody for coming. Hate to have to address you all about this. I want to be as straight as I possibly can with you about
my man is stuttering and he knows his hand is caught in a cookie jar.
And share my view on this, and just to give you the perspective, I want you to hear it from me directly, and to provide whatever support I can do given everything. So I don't want to mince words, but I hate having had to do this. It's actually
nah, it's a bunch of BS. I'm sorry. I know she's gonna make her comments on it, and you should check her stuff out most definitely. But my man's hand is caught in the cookie jar, and now he's got to go to the people and be like, yeah, I'm sorry, blah. But you knew this was gonna happen. And see, that's the thing. Like, it's not so much on the end user. Like, yeah, you got to be responsible and know what you're getting into. But like, you as the company owner on the other side of the spectrum, you knew what you were getting into before you got started. You knew the risks. Some of these company folks, CEO heads or whatever, were saying, it's better to, ask for forgiveness later. Let's just do what we need to do right now. And then we can deal with the fallout after the fact. And in this case, this man was not as successful in that as he thought he would be. And again, it makes sense when you have taken, intellectual property and just went on ahead and did this whole play and, you know, taking people's stuff without permission, and then like you're going to use it. And the reality is, like, would things have been better if they had went on ahead and said, you know what, before we go this route, let's just do our due diligence and take $10 million. They got $10 million as a startup. Well, if they had took a portion of that and came to some sort of like terms of agreement beforehand and said like, hey man, let us get like, we don't have to use your entire catalog from Universal or Warner or whatever, but like, let us get a portion of that. Let us get some of this older music, something. They could have finessed that and finagled that and, did something where everybody would have been okay. But instead, they went around and they did what they did, knowing the risks. And now the end user is ultimately the one that has to pay for it, because now anything you generate using these tools, like, you can't immediately use anymore. And so for the folks that, like, I did a review on Udio years ago and I did the free version. So for me, I'm not invested into this stuff. And then I saw the writings on the wall. Once I saw the videos with, the music started generating like real music, like Mariah Carey and like Wham and some other stuff in real time, then it was like, oh yeah, this ain't no good, because like, if you don't have an ear to catch that stuff, then you'll be, prompting this stuff, and you could spit out something that in fact belongs to somebody else, major artist or not, and your hand could get caught in the cookie jar. And the way these contracts are written, especially like Udio's contract is written in a way that once you use the product, you use it at your own risk. You can make money off of it, but you can't claim ownership per se. And any damages that were to occur because you're using this product due to a potential copyright violation, they're not responsible for. And it's in their agreement. So you can use this stuff and you can end up spitting out somebody else's stuff and don't know it, and put it in your music, and now you release it and you don't know why you got a copyright takedown. Because you thought like this stuff was just pulling music from the ether and giving it to you. And the reality is it was referencing, thousands, if not tens of thousands of songs, and putting together, those chord progressions and things of that nature, just amalgamations of different tones, and spitting out something that could have very well been like more of somebody else's stuff than what you realize. And so like, that's where the problem lies. And Udio, in my opinion, Udio and Suno for that matter, like Suno's supposed to be worth about $2 billion from what I've heard. And Udio revenued, according to this article right here, revenued about $45 billion. And its starting point was about 10 milli. So they could go on ahead and, get the ball rolling and do their thing, making music. Generative AI. But as a result of how things have shaken out, it's going to impact the users. So you could do the free ski, you could do the $10 a month, you could do the $30 a month. But now you got some limits on what you can and can't do, because they got a paywall. So imagine using Udio and for right now, it's like, wait a minute, it's like you bought the car, but you can't drive it. You paid to, rent the house, but you can't spend the night there. You can't move your stuff in, even though you're paying the fee. That's wild stuff. And so, it's just interesting that, again, like, a lot of people were looking at this stuff as like the answer to some problems, and it created more problems in the process because of the way things were done. Let me make it clear from my perspective. I've said this before. Say it again. I could care less. I like the technology. I think the technology in and of itself is cool. I have done reviews of products with, AI core, AI-based chord generators and things of that nature. Taking stuff, flipping MIDI and whatnot. I have no problem with technology. Technology can be useful, but technology has to be useful in a way that it doesn't put the user in a liability. And so that's the bigger issue. Beyond all the other stuff, I mean, I will say I do find like the person that puts a prompt into the machine and that's all they did was, typed in some words and it spit out a song. That's not creative. Not to me. That's my own take on it. You can feel how you want to feel. It is what it is. To me, that's not creative. And from a legal standpoint, you can't even claim it as your own. So there's that too. But beyond that, if you're using this stuff and these companies, have these in their terms of agreement, they're saying, hey, whatever damages occur using our product, we're letting you know that we're not responsible for. It's kind of like, all right, we're hanging you as the user out to dry. And that's problematic. So yeah, man, it'll be interesting to see how this stuff falls out. Suno is, I'm keeping an eye on Suno just to see how that rolls out. It seems like they are also full steam ahead with the whole situation with Timberland and Tata and that artist. That was a thing. They did a premiere review on that. I'll probably talk about that a little bit more. I think the frustrating part is, for folks who were using Udio and Suno. And I'll just say this and I'm going to wrap it up and I'll be done. The frustrating part or the disappointing part, when this stuff first rolled out, it was kind of like the answer to the problem that occurred with sampling. In other words, so if you sample a record or some existing music and you wanted to release it, putting on a streaming platform, or, you got into a label situation and you're going to get paid. Well, you had to get the sample cleared and you had to go through a process. You had to pay the fee. If you're an independent artist and you're using a sample, you got to pay the fee. And that's usually a hassle and a pain in the butt. If you're in a label situation and you got the sample, then the label will clear the sample. You just got to make sure you disclose everything. And then sometimes they might not be able to use it because the people who still own that sample may not allow you to use it. So then we went the direction of, all right, we still use samples, but now we go into the construction kits and, pre-made loops and loops. And those things certainly help because on paper, you wouldn't have to worry about paying, clearing the sample if you're using royalty-free loops and things of that nature. Although that has its own, share of issues. I've discussed some of those things on earlier videos years ago, talking about like Spotify and some of the situations there where if you use the loop and somebody else uses the loop, Spotify ultimately owns the loop, but somebody else uses it and then they turn around and they upload it, put a beat around it, and then put it on their not Spotify. I can't even think of the other one. Oh my gosh. Splice. You pull a loop from Splice, you use it, you change it up, whatever, and then you take that Splice loop and you upload it to your Spotify, and then you put content ID on it. Somebody else turns around and they use that same loop, but now they can't use it. It's a problem. But the reality is neither person owns the loop. It belongs to Splice. So there are potential headaches with that. And then the third scenario where you got folks out here that'll be like, hey man, I'll make this loop for you. And, you come to find out that the loop is actually already somebody else's song or a portion of their song from an old record. They just repurposed it and, pitched it up, pitched it down, and then they sold it to you and were like, hey man, you know, you could use these loops, but then like if it get placed, you have to pay me a fee. And it's like, what? It's like, that's not even yours. That's, you know, I don't know. That's Faith Evans. That's Aaliyah's. That's somebody else's stuff. That's the Spinners. Like, you just took these old samples and repurposed them and then tried to act like you created them when you didn't. So Udio would have been cool. Suno would have been cool in the sense that, you know, when done correctly, you would have had something in the pocket that would have enabled the user to like just generate multitudes of loops without having to do all of that. Like, you don't have to worry about clearing the sample. You don't have to worry about the weird stuff that can come with using other people's loops. You know, 10 people on like one 8-bar loop, and then like it gets placed, and then people are like, well, I want to get paid because I did the piano part and somebody else did the pad. It's like, well, wait a minute, I thought there was one person. Like, all the craziness that goes with that could be eliminated. That is the perk of, you know, from the urban musician side of things. That is the perk of using something like a Udio or using something like a Suno. You could get the sample. The sample comes from the ether. Initially, everybody thought like, hey, you could just use this stuff and it was no big deal. Repurpose it, put it in your music, and you just got an infinite supply of riffs that you can just pump out. And unfortunately, that is not the case, because all of the reference materials and all of the materials that were used to feed it was all copywritten music. So that's the problem. Yeah, man. It'll be interesting to see how all this stuff pans out. And again, like, the users are the ones who have to pay, you know, the price, so to speak. Especially now, you pay for the service, you can't fully use it. I don't want to start my trial. And yeah, it's just a mess. But, you know, for those of you who are using these products, let me know, does this court ruling and this new situation, this fallout, will it inhibit you using a platform like this? Will you still rock with Udio in the next few months as they shake things out? Or will you move to a different platform and call it good? Let me know your thoughts. I'm going to wrap it up with this video. I'll probably do a part 2. But other than that, I'm Tim Keys, and I'm out. Thank you for watching. Peace.